Hello and welcome. I'm Michelle Swan Young, and today we're going to be talking about what exactly is stress and what exactly is calm. First of all, I want us to understand why this even matters. Why should we even care? And I think it's really important because when we understand what's happening in our whole selves, when we experience stress and when we experience calm, then we can support ourselves with kindness. We cannot judge ourselves or shame ourselves whenever we are experiencing distress. And we can also bring in tools whenever it is appropriate, whenever we want to shift, when we don't like how we're feeling and we want to feel differently. So first of all, stress is a whole person experience. It affects our mind for sure. It affects our whole bodies and our relationships. And I know a lot of times people might feel like, oh, it's just something it's all in your head. So you just should shake it off or get over it or something like that. But a stress response is actually, first of all, a really helpful and vital thing for us to have as human beings. And then also, it's not something we can just think our way out of. It's a whole body experience. So I want to explain a little bit about our bodies and how this works in our bodies. And this is going to be a very large oversimplification of what actually happens. But I think that this kind of model that we're going to talk about can be helpful when we're not, physicians, or we don't need to understand all of the intricate details, but we need to kind of get a basic understanding. So we have a part of ourselves is called the autonomic nervous system, the ANS. And that is the nerves and the whole system that regulates things that we don't choose in our minds. So like our heartbeat, or when we're not taking a conscious breath, our breathing. And that autonomic nervous system has, very simplified, two parts. One is the parasympathetic nervous system, and one is the sympathetic nervous system. I know it's a lot of technical terms, but I will help you understand it all. The parasympathetic nervous system is basically what governs the calm response, and that's the state that we hopefully are spending most of our time in. And then the sympathetic nervous system is governing the stress response, and that's super helpful and needed for us to be able to keep living well. So these are actually different structures in our bodies, if you will. There are different nerves that will, when they're turned on, when those are firing, it is stimulating the things in the calm response. So oftentimes that parasympathetic system will be called the rest and digest system. So the calm response, it's stimulating us to turn on our digestion and to repair our cells, different things like that, the kind of resting, the repair that happens during rest. And then over in the stress response, in the sympathetic nervous system, that's often called fight, flight, or freeze. Sometimes people have added also faint and fawn, but for our purposes today, we'll talk about fight, flight, or freeze. And when those nerves start firing, then it readies our bodies to be able to fight, to flee, or to freeze and not be detected by a predator or something like that. So how these things get turned on or off depends on if our bodies, our minds actually, perceive a threat. So if I see a bear and I know that bears are lethal in some circumstances, then my stress response will get turned on. So I could also see the bear and not think that it was going to hurt me. So maybe if that bear was behind a piece of glass, and I would not get a stress response in that case. So our brains do have the ability and are the main places where we turn on the stress response. But the stress response actually happens in our entire bodies, and it affects not only our bodies and our minds, but also our relationships. So our brains are turning that on. But the important thing to know, well, there's a couple of important things. One is that when our stress response is on, our calm response is off. It's kind of a toggle switch. You have to, I'm sure it's not 100% that way, but you cannot have your heart beating both fast and slow at the same time. Right? So when the stress response is triggering a faster heartbeat, the calm response is not triggering a slower heartbeat, or it's not regulating to a slower heartbeat. So our brains are really great at turning on the stress, at seeing something, recognizing that it's a threat to us, and then activating all of the different systems in our bodies that are needed for us to fight, to flee, or to freeze. But we can't actually think our ways back to the calm response, because one of the things that happens in a stress response is that very logical, cognitive thinking part of our brains, especially in a really extreme stress response, kind of goes offline. And we start relying more on the emotional parts of our brains to help make decisions. And it works really well. So if we want to help ourselves shift back into the calm response, we actually might need to use our bodies. So we can use our bodies by actually stimulating the nerves that are part of the parasympathetic nervous system, that calm response. So I think it's important to understand this, because oftentimes when we are having a stress response, we'll try to sort of force ourselves back into calm by thinking about it. But that often just gets us even more stressed. It sort of keeps the cycle going. But what we can do is learn tools to engage with our bodies, and sometimes also our minds, to help shift that back into calm in a way that's way more efficient. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit about how our bodies and our brains work, and helps you to be able to maybe be a little gentler to yourself whenever you do experience a stress response. Because yes, the stress response has this natural cycle to it, and it will decrease on its own, but sometimes we have other things that happen to kind of keep us in that stress response, our thoughts about what's going on. And if we want to proactively help ourselves shift, we need to use some different tools other than just kind of berating ourselves about the fact that we're stressed out. All right, I hope that helps you out. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like. It really helps me out. And if you want to hear whenever I have a new video that comes out, click subscribe so you'll get a little notification in your YouTube panel. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Take good care.